start talking about data spectrum we have today, right? So if we look at a survey, and this is again, I have picked it up from IDC multi-cloud survey done a while ago. If we look at, the survey was done on 200 US-based multi-cloud customer and their enterprise levels, right? And most of the customers, right, around 86%, right, they say that they use multiple public cloud. That means the names are Azure, Google Cloud, or AWS, and maybe one or more private or dedicated that you to comply with the reasons, comply with the organization standards and things like that. The next category, which is way low, but they say that they still use multiple private dedicated cloud, right? And the next portion comes, they use only multiple public cloud and one or more dedicated private cloud. And the last category is which is less, who use multiple clouds only. So now, if we look at the data spectrum as of today, right, what it tells us is there are most of the enterprises who basically uses cloud. Either they use multi-cloud alongside a dedicated private cloud. That means it's kind of going to be an on-prem environment where they have their data stored mostly, and maybe that is due to the reason of compliance, or that is due to the reason that they are still on the way to migrate everything to cloud. Irrespective of the case, right, we can see this diversified data scenario. Now, if we take a deep down, right, when you talk about data, right, in today's world, even in a personal data level, right, we do not kind of store data. The data is transacting and going everywhere. For example, we receive a message on a messaging app, and that message, goes to some other way. Either we communicate, or maybe we use Microsoft Teams to chat with some person, and then let's say we're chatting with a manager on a project, and then finally, once the chat is done, the manager might ask, "Can you summarize and send that email to me?" So what happens is the data transacts from one place to another place. Data doesn't stay. So that means it's becoming more and more difficult to get a hold of data in one place, and data is getting translated on the transfer. So you really don't understand, how a non-sensitive data becomes sensitive at what point in time, or at what point in time the data loses its sensitivity and becomes the normal data again. Just to give you a good example, let's say we are working in a Salesforce lead, right? So we work on a lead there, and we get the budgeting, we do the amount, and we do the contract, everything in Salesforce. But when we write a scope of work kind of thing, out of that discussion, so we gist out what is technically required. So we don't take out any sensitive information like how much the customer is can charge, or what is the billing definition and things like that, right? But on the other hand, right, so let's say we are expected to estimate certain things. So when we write an estimate or try to develop something alongside, we are providing an estimate. So in that, we also, add the cost factor to it, add the legal terms and conditions to it. So with that, basically, that becomes again sensitive, right? Now, these are certain transactional areas, I would say, through which the data becomes sensitive or lose its sensitivity. And fundamentally, to summarize here, right, what we see is obviously there are multi-cloud environments across enterprises, and it doesn't stop there. It also takes the data to roller coaster ride across the clouds and your on-prem environment, right? Now, when the scenario, right, what exactly happens when you leave everything and let it run just like that? We really see some challenges. So first of all, we miss a consolidated view of your entire data estate. So let's say you're using Google Cloud, you're using Microsoft storage account, right? Microsoft Azure storage account. So for example, you go to Google BigQuery, write a query, get some data out of it, and then download it as a CSV, and then you want to share the CSV to some customer, you upload it to a blob file. I mean, it's really real case scenario, but there's no tool which basically helps you to say that, okay, you have the same data in both the places, both the data has same level of sensitivity, and both the data contains same metadata, right? So that's where the missing piece comes in, that we miss, or enterprises missing a consolidated view of it. Now, With that consolidation, what also comes in, the moment you download or write a query, right? At times, the customer might be asking, can you format this column for me, right? Now, we are adding or kind of adding some layers on top of data, basically tweaking the data set. So that becomes inconsistent. So your data setting in Google Cloud or AWS Cloud might not be this, the data just can be same, but the data might not be same, which is sitting as a copy in Azure, right? So that's how that triggers a missing classification policy. You cannot basically, both the data sitting across multiple clouds are same, but you cannot classify because they have certain different attributes, right? Now that's where the inconsistency comes in, and that's another challenge when you see as of today with a multi-cloud environment, right? Now, if I just kind of go next, and when things get spread across, right, obviously time is a factor which kicks in. So for example, if you have a single cloud environment, you can definitely use tools and you can have train people, wherein basically there are experts. For example, you get AWS expert, you can get Azure experts who just kind of drill the data for you in that particular cloud environment. But if it is multi-cloud, it's really challenging, because first thing, the data landscape might be different and the data volume might be different, as well as the data itself might be different, though they are carrying the same meaning, right? So that's where things become time consuming. And with all these, there's a cherry on top, which is called error prone. Because if you try to, if you have a scenario where you don't have any consolidated view, you have isolated views, and you have the inconsistencies across your data classification and policy, and you have taken a lot of time to kind of consolidate that, and that there's no unified single tool which does it for you. So basically you have to break the data, take things bits and pieces across the ground, and then trying to join them. The moment you join them, right, that's a human-led activity, and that's error prone, right? So that's why these are the challenges we see as of today, whenever we talk about multi-cloud environment. Now, what's and just to add to that, it can be like anywhere, right? You can use GCP, you can use Azure, and then you can use AWS to keep the data. Now, to solve this, Microsoft has really come up with Microsoft Purview, right? And the main, basically, Purview is itself is a product which contains multiple different apps to solve different problem inside, and as a consolidated one, it basically offers a multi-cloud governance solution. Now, you create a Purview account, you get a governance portal within it, and what happens is basically all the data sources, either they're on-premises or they're multi-cloud, GCP, AWS, Azure, wherever they are, right? So we can connect that data source, and the good thing about Purview is it doesn't copy your entire data. It just scans the data, and based on the scan, it extracts the metadata. So you are not afraid to lose kind of the data residency as well, right? Data stays in a data store. You just put a scanner scans the metadata, and that's why you see in Purview, right? Now with that, we get the data map. Data map is a fundamental layer wherein you can have your data ingested from your SaaS application, your cloud application, your on-premises, right? And then obviously you can look at applying certain things on top of it. One of the things is like cataloging the data. So when you say catalog, if I go by the normal meaning of the catalog, right? So what happens is that means listing what we have. So once we map all the data or all the metadata at scale, right? Data catalog is one of the features offered which gives you seamless access across all your data sources. Either it's kind of MongoDB sitting in AWS, either it's a BigQuery sitting in GCP, either it's a blob storage sitting in Azure. So all fundamentally gets one single view into catalog, data catalog. Now, data sharing is another thing, because the moment you get a consolidated view, you also getting a feature that you can share your view across the organizations. That means the team which is managing your different cloud, which is other Microsoft cloud, they might not have visibility to your Microsoft cloud, right? So it's really becomes easy to share the data based on the data map done. And again, you're not sharing the data, you're sharing the metadata. so that they get an idea what exactly is there behind the hood. Because as of today, we don't even know what kind of data we have, and that's one of the biggest problems organizations have, right? And also, once we do all this, analysis and data scanning, we get a kind of estate insights, like how big the environment is. When you start scanning, right, you may not be knowing that there's an S2 bucket which is listing all my vendors there, or there might be a MongoDB which is carrying all my app transactions over there. You never know that how where are the data estate is spread across. You never know if someone has actually used a storage account to share something which is beyond against your policy, maybe, but to customer, right? Now, what you can do, you can apply policies across all those things to kind of understand the thing over here. And on top of it, there are people who are will be specifically, for this particular thing, like will be data producers and the consumers. As I said, like their data producers, they will see the data catalog, see what kind of data they have, and the consumers who consume the data, they can also see this and share the data. Now, data officers will have the visibility, like a bird's eye view of the policy and the data estate, right? And obviously you have different products over there, right? Now, with that, the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of how, once you create a Purview account, how you see the homepage looks like, right? So as you can see, this is from the demo environment, and this is how the homepage looks like. And in the homepage, this is a different portal. This is called Purview Governance Portal, which is dedicated to Purview, because Purview doesn't. Maybe the Purview engine sits in Azure, but when you create a Purview account, you are navigated to this particular thing, because this has its own hierarchy and architecture to offer to you. And this has a wonderful homepage, which will be like going step by step, right? Now, with that said, let me quickly see the first thing, right? On the top itself, we can see when you open a Purview account, you can see the catalog metrics as two sources, and that two sources combined all across your sources, right? Wherever they are. Second thing is how many assets. Right now, this is taken from a fresh environment, so you see no assets, no glossary, but it will be there. Next thing, what you can do is you can search and any metadata or data assets what you've scanned already. Right? And the next thing what you could do is kind of homepage styles, and these are defined by the product. That these are the things which is basically looks the most important thing from a data viewer or data analyst point of view, right, or data governance point of view. And obviously in the portal itself, because it is still evolving and we are still learning about the portal, so Microsoft has given a links for learning in the portal homepage itself. That means Microsoft also encourages that this is how we should keep up our learning with the tool and then make the best use of it. And the next one, there's really a small icon over there, right? And that's like the announcement. So anything happens dedicated to Purview, right? All the announcement, I'm going to also show you in the demo. You're going to see all the announcement listing there. So that's basically, if you really want to keep a track what happened in Purview, you can see that. You don't need to go to another screen, another website or so to see that. Next thing, this is like you need to switch subscription, you need to switch account, you get that, right? So the next one would be demo. But before demo, I'd like to take a quick pause for any questions think you have. Okay, so just as a next step, what I would do is from now on kind of keep the sharing here, and let's try to pull up Azure portal. So to see Azure portal, what I have done, I have basically created one Azure account or Microsoft Purview account and Azure subscription before the demo, and one kind of just now. So if we open the resource in Azure, the way it looks like, you can see it took a while and it checked the permission, and then it showed you the open Microsoft Purview governance portal. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to open on a new tab. And let's see if I just take it back and then kind of do the sign in. And it looks like I'm signed in back. So I will show the portal. Well, so this is the same thing, and you can see, right, when I took the first screenshot, then it was 2 sources. Right now it's 4 sources, 131 assets, because no glossary defined. It's no glossary. Browse asset, you can basically click on that, and recent access, because I've done some access an hour ago. That's what it shows here. Now, the first thing here, if we expand this extreme left navigation, right, we go to data map, and when you go to data map, right, by default, it loads a map view of your structure. So this is more of a logical structure, which you can define, right? And I would let it load for a moment. And next thing, we will see that how you can structure your Purview account to have the things identified separately, and how you can basically tag it. Now, if you look at this, I've used again Microsoft Standard Contours of name, and this is the root one. And if you look at every collection, right, this is called the root collection, and you can create multiple collections inside collection, as you can see there, or you can add register something. So the steps are: create. By default, there's a root. Either you can create something or register something inside that root, or you can create your own collection and then create inside that. So now under each, and if we click on view details, that's going to show us the collection, right? And you can add a collection from here, refresh it. So let me try to go back there and go to collections again. So if I go back to sources, you can see there's a small icon here called register. So when I click on register, so there's a laundry list opens up from the right hand side, and you can see there are categories. One is all, one is Azure, one is database, file, services. So this is all across what Purview supports as of today. And you can see there are a couple of things. For example, I have one MongoDB instance, right? And if I scroll down further, I didn't intentionally do Microsoft one, because we know that's going to work for sure, because it's in the same cloud environment. Now, if I go to databases, right, you can see Google BigQuery and MongoDB. So we picked up 2 databases, which is outside Microsoft Cloud landscape, to really show that it can scan, right? Now, what is done as the next one, I click on the right hand side of cancel, right? And as you can see, I have categorized this in a different way. Contours of use AWS, GCP, and Azure, right? And one is unstructured, one is structured. And under unstructured, we have registered. So once you register successfully, so again, for example, if you really want to register here, I just go there, and on the right hand side, either we can type as well. So we type in and we continue. You got to give a name, you got to give a collection. So by default, because I'm creating under that collection, it's kind of getting created under that collection. And then once that's created, you're going to give the server host name. So let me try to show my installation if I can. All right, so this is where my installation here, and you can see this is sitting on AWS. I mean, obviously not Azure, right? And then this has some datasets, databases. Then coming back to this, and if I connect, just let me try. Right. Yeah. So from this you can connect, and then based on the connection, and if I just get to anything, let's say I want to connect to this, and then the connection string will be exposed for me somehow here. And I close this, and in here, when in here, we just need to enter the server name over here and register. So once you do that, right, you try to do that in the new account I've created. Once you do that, it sets as a registered resource over here. Now, connection is something, it connects and then it checks if it exists or not. Connection doesn't read or scan anything out of that data source, right? And to read that, you have to set up something called a scan. Now, in that scan, what we do is, you can see there's a scan icon there, which lets us a new scan. You can edit that existing one. And if I quickly edit that, it's going to show you what was the server name it is connected to. So right now, let's cancel it. And we're going to go to view details, right? And in the view details, you can see there are two scans which is created for this, and you have option to new scan. You can edit that, and I'm going to go to kind of scans. You can see there are two scans. So what I have done here is I have configured scans for each. If I go back to my Mongo installation, so go to databases and go to that particular one, right? Let's say now it's go to sample, but for databases and browse collections. So when I browse collections, it basically gives you two databases I have, analytics and training. And I'm scanning this result here, and the scan is configured. And once I configure the scan, so let's say if I want to start a scan. Now, before we get to scan thing, right, there's one more crucial fact here to be done. So now, Purview is interface, a governance portal gives you a view, but there's also something like the scanner, right, or integration runtime, which basically acts as the physical machine. That can be Azure virtual machine, that can be your Azure managed one, that can be in even on-prem machine, anything, right? So now if I go to integration runtime, what happens is you can create two type of integration runtime. So you can create Azure managed, one is self-hosted. So with self-hosted, you have to have your own machine, that can be virtual, that can be physical, and there are installation steps like you need to download some installer, kind of as a prerequisite, set up certain binaries and install certain things, right? And that can also vary based on the kind of connector you're connecting to. And this is important because this is required when you are trying to connect to a data source which is not inside Azure, right? So just to show you, for example, if I go here and again register and then go to the Mongo instance, right? Go to scan and click on existing scan and again edit the scan, right? So in here, there's one name given, there's a credential. Also, the credential has to be stored from Key Vault because that's what the Purview counts it for. And you have the connection string, you have the databases, right? I'm not specified at any collection. That means it's going to scan all the collections, right? And that's how the screen is created. And if you look at this, as I shown you, integration runtime has two. One is Azure managed and one is self-hosted. It only lists down self-hosted. That's because, based on the data type, we are trying to scan a MongoDB. Now, if we go and try to edit, so if I hit cancel, go back to sources and try to kind of do details for Azure blob, right? And then in there, if I try to edit one of the existing Azure scan, right? And let's edit the scan. You see the integration runtime is automatically picked up. So auto resolve, Azure managed, or self-hosted. So it totally depends on the kind of data connector or the connector you're basically using, right? According to that. So now let me hit cancel, and then I'll go back to the Mongo one and go to scans. You can see there are two scans completed, right? And if I go to scans, let me go to another one, right? If I go to the tool BigQuery, and also I'm going to show you the GCP instance over here, what I have there, right? If I go to GCP instance, and this is the sample set, and these are like some data sets. If I go to sample CSV, right? So open with a new tab, right? And this is my schema, and for the query and new tab. And it's going to show you some results out of it, the data it has, right, as you can see there. So this is tabular. That's why if I go back to the Purview, it's categorized under structured one. And obviously, if you want to create integration runtime to connect to Google Cloud Platform BigQuery, you have to have certain prerequisites around Java, the jar files, and all the prerequisites documented by Microsoft. And make sure that your integration runtimes are online. That means they're connected over internet, right? So the main purpose, for example, if you want to do it through VNet, that also can be done with the right networking configuration, right? Now, let us try to look at some of the sources we have. For example, if it failed for some reason, right? Again, this is another classic example of there are discovered assets, but it has failed to do certain activities, right? If I go to more info, it says data source already exists, because what I have done is here we have configured Azure Blob, and the same Azure Blob is configured through Azure subscription, right? So when the Azure subscription was getting scanned, it found the blob, it's going to get the duplicate. And one more interesting thing is, if I try to add the same MongoDB, which is already added it anywhere in the count, right? That's going to show you that that's already present, so it's a duplicate sync. So technically, you cannot, by mistake as well, duplicate scans. Now, talking about the scans, when you do a scan, right? So if I just try to get a few details and edit scores, you can go for a new scan, obviously. So any name you keep to the scan, and you can see only the self-hosted one comes in, and the credential I'm gonna take it from the key vault, right, which is Mongo, and then right now I have the connection string, but I'm not going to create that. But let me try to kind of get that there, right? So I'll try to get this connection string from the Mongo in the. There we go. If I paste it, and databases, I'd say sample. And to continue it, right? And here there's another thing, right? One thing is just for the demonstration purpose, too, I have set up the scan for once, but obviously you can do a recurrence of monthly, weekly, or anything you want, right? So that's kind of a production case scenario, and billing goes higher as well. That's something to keep in mind. So one tip here, if you are doing a POC or if you're trying to learn how Purview works, make sure that you do one scan so that you don't have a scheduled scan goes over and over, and then you get all your credits exhausted. Rather, you just scan it once and then see if it is working, right? Now, I'm going to cancel it for now. And once the scans are successful, it's going to show you some metadata over here, right? And classified assets and all stuff here. And it also shows you the collection path, where exactly it is, collect. And this page itself, introductory itself, to see this failed runs as well. Now, if I go to collections, it also shows you what kind of collection it has, and then if I go to each collection, right? So that's gonna go inside what is inside that, and then things like that. So if I go to structured, right? Now, if you go to monitoring tab on the left hand side, right? So you can see what exactly happened, total summary, in progress, and things like that. So that was kind of all the scans we have across multiple data set, right? The next thing is we have already created the catalog, or Purview is already created the catalog because the scan is performed already, right? Now, if I search for, let's say, something, search for employee, and it gives, for example, you see this is a table which comes in. So if I click on that, it's gonna show me that it is coming from a BigQuery table, right? And then edit that, and it also shows you where exactly the data is coming from and where the data are, right? Now again, if I go back to data catalog and then quickly kind of browse assets, right? So let's go to browse any of the assets, and you see this basically listed down the entire metadata here. And the left hand side gives you dashboard and things like that. Now, let's say if you really want to go multi-cloud, what I could have done here is I could have selected Mongo, right? It shows me here. Otherwise, there's also a possibility if I go back to the root and go to the data map once again, right? If I just kind of list everything like the Mongo, and the BigQuery and the Azure stuff under one particular thing here, right? Which is, yeah, which is a collection. So obviously you can see everything in a single place, single things, extracted all together as well, right? And now let me go back to source, and yeah, so this is one structure right here. And to add something, right, it's really easy. So I'm gonna show another demo here quickly, which I have done for another account here. So this enterprise account, and I'll let my governance portal load. While it loads, I'll go back and show you something interesting here as well. Now let's go back to data catalog, and we just delete everything, right, and browse assets. So you can browse it by source type, you can browse it by collection. So I will go to the highest one, it's Azure. So once you do that, on the left hand side, you can literally filter on any kind of things you want, and that's kind of shows you the results. Also, instead of relevance, you can sort it by name. You can always filter another one, and this created and updated within works better if we schedule a scan, and we can do subsequent multiple incremental scan as well, right? That will take the delta part of the data instead of taking all the data, as you can see. So if I just select that, I believe no results because there's nothing as such for the rating selected here, right? No business assets. It's just a fresh catalog, right? We have not defined any glossary. Glossary is like a business term which you can define and map over here. So that was something I just wanted to show here, right? And then I think here I will try to quickly see, okay, my data map is added, which is really nice. All right, so let's give it some time to load, and I'll go to data catalog, and let's go to data map again. And here you can basically see, right? And this is a fresh environment, as I said. So I'll show you how easy it is. I'm going to add everything into the root collection. So let's register something, and I will register Mongo. And when I do that, we say continue, and sample Mongo TV. Let's try to access the server, right? And I'd say from the root, which is fine, register. So says register should not have. So yeah, that's a nice thing to have because sometimes you never know what exactly is expected. So I'm going to remove that and register. Say it lets me. Ideally, it should be giving me a chance to register because I'm using a Purview account altogether, right? And that's all you have it added, right? And as you can see, there's no possible integration runtime because again, this is a fresh new environment, but we can add as many as we want to, and then we can create integration runtime and schedule a scan and then go from there. So let's see if we can add, yeah, another one. So we register another one, and we register, right? So let's see, we do not have an Azure SQL as such. We can obviously do AWS account as well directly as G buckets and all standard one. But right now, just for the interest of time, let's say Azure Vault sample for the subscription. Yeah. I'd say select an account name, endpoint, everything fine. Say register. So you can keep things registered, right? But scan is something. Scan doesn't happen on registration. Scan happens on only once you start and schedule a scan, right? So With that, I think that was a quick demo. And to summarize, you can have a number of Purview accounts and you can create multiple structured collection structuring from your row. So if I go back to another one, and then the way it will look like, and you can enable and connect to multiple cloud data sources across the cloud, right? And then build your catalog out of those multiple data sources. So that was something I wanted to show with demo.